One of the most infamous serial killers, Ted Bundy, killed 28 women across 4 different states, but investigators still speculate that there could have been more victims. Then on January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed by the electric chair in Florida State Prison. It took over $5 million of taxpayers' money to execute this one man. Stories like Ted Bundy and many others on death row have always been a topic of interest to me, so this is why I feel qualified telling you this information. So during my speech, I'd like you to keep an open mind as I dive into the topic of capital punishment. I'll be talking about costs, the history of capital punishment, and the moral divide of this topic. But before I talk about all that, we must ask the question, what is capital punishment? Capital punishment, or the death penalty, is the execution of an offender after they have been sentenced to death after being convicted by a court of law of a criminal offense. Capital punishment was first established in the 18th century BC in the Code of King Hammurabi of Babylon. In that code, the death penalty was codified for 25 different crimes. These death penalties included crucifixion, drowning, beating to death, burning alive, and impalement. Flash forward to the foundings of America. Britain actually influenced how America sees the death penalty nowadays, but I won't be covering that topic. In fact, the first ever recorded execution of the new colonies was in the Jamestown colony of Virginia in 1608. And in 1692, the Virginia governor at the time enacted the divine, moral, and martial laws that provided the death penalty for minor offenses like stealing grapes, killing chickens, and trading with Indians. But in modern America, things are a bit different. 29 out of 50 states have authorized the use of execution, with lethal injection being the primary use. Electrocution, lethal gas, hanging, and a firing squad are all secondary uses if the offender requests for a different method. Now that I've explained the history and what capital punishment is, let's talk about how much it costs to sentence someone to death. Now, most people would think that capital punishment would be cheaper than life in prison because the state no longer has to pay for the offender's confinement, healthcare, or any other related costs, but in actual reality, the death penalty is far more expensive. What makes the death penalty so expensive is legal costs because most people on death row can't afford an attorney, pretrial costs because the jurors need hard evidence before they can even convict someone of the death penalty, jury selection, the trial itself because death penalty trials usually last longer than most trials because they're going over so much evidence, incarceration, and appeals. Now, when you compare the cost of death penalty and non-death penalty cases, the differences are astounding. The median cost for a non-death penalty court case is $700,000, and the median cost for a death penalty court case is $1.26 million. Now remember, Ted Bundy's was over $5 million. Many people see the cost of his death and many others on death row as nothing for the crimes that these people have committed. I would list you all the reasons why capital punishment is morally wrong or right, but my speech isn't about trying to convince you of something, but trying to help you understand which side you're on. And now before I talk about the next two things, I would like you to understand which side you're on and try to see the other side, the other person's side. Now, the last person to be convicted of the death penalty was Christopher Andre. It was 22 days ago he received death by lethal injection in a federal prison. And in 1 month and 2 days, a man by the name of Orlando Hall is scheduled to be executed by lethal injection. Do these two people, did they deserve this? I don't know necessarily the crimes they have committed, but I know that Christopher Andre, he was the 128,000th person to receive the death penalty, and Orlando Bloom would be 129th person to receive the death penalty. Do these two people deserve to continue life in prison or the death penalty? I would like you to think about that So thank you for listening to my speech. My references are behind me.